Cool. Well, go ahead, Luke.
Cool. I think I can record it on my computer as well, maybe. No, that's all right. Sweet. I'll just share my screen now. Cool. Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming along today. My name's Luke. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vext. So a little bit on what I'll be talking about today. I'll quickly dust over a brief history of Vext, the company. We're a pretty recent startup. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. I'll walk through why you might want to join our team, what jobs are actually on offer, and how to apply to them. But my presentation itself is pretty short, so I'm keen to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to chuck them in the chat or through the Q&A function. Alternatively, you can email me at luke@vxt.co.nz, and I'm happy to answer your questions there. You can also hit me up on social media, on LinkedIn, or if you have it, Twitter or something like that too. Cool. So let's get into it. So I started Vext about almost 4 years ago now, actually, with my co-founder pictured here, Lucy Turner. We actually started it, some people may or may not recognize the forestry building on campus. So we started it here at UC. The original idea for the business was to build an app to help people manage their voicemail. So effectively, you could use voicemail the same way you do like email or like a messenger. So we built that product and released it in late 2019. So almost a year after we actually started the business itself, and we got a bit of traction. We actually ended up on 7 o'clock news on Channel 3 and Channel 1 at the same time, which was pretty hectic. And the result of that was massive growth in our early users. We then kind of went on to, here you can see the kind of user growth chart. So it's pretty crazy. You can kind of tell when we went on the news here, we had been getting pretty good growth in the early days. And then our user base exploded by about 1,000% in just a couple of days. So that was pretty exciting for us, and it led to some really good things. Early the next year, we went into fundraising to try and help us grow really fast. So we ended up raising about $600,000 to grow our team and do some really fun stuff. We ended up actually changing the business quite a lot, because we found that with the technology, with the software that we'd built so far, we weren't going to be able to achieve the ambition that we'd set out to. So we ended up pivoting the business to what it is today, and I'll go into that now. So Vext started as this voicemail app, which people use to help manage their voicemail messages, because checking your voicemail is a horrible experience. So with Vext, you can open our app and read your messages, because we use speech recognition to transcribe them. You can also save different voicemail greetings that would change depending on the time of day, who's calling, and more. And that can be really useful for people in professional services. Imagine like a real estate agent or something like that. But yeah, it was a handy tool that we built. We ended up in late 2020 pivoting the company, and now Vext is broadly a communications platform that people like lawyers and recruiters use to make phone calls, because we automate administrative work associated with calls. So we end up saving our users about an hour per day, which is a lot of time, especially when you're a lawyer who charges a lot for the hours that you work with clients with. So yeah, ultimately our mission is to leverage communications data to automate administrative work. So what that actually means in practice is, today we help people with phone calls. In the future, we'll help people with all sorts of different communications channels like video, instant messaging, SMS. So you can actually use Vext for video calling today. So you might use Vext for a session like this. So this is our team. Today, we're a team of about 12 people, 8 full-time staff, and then a bunch of part-timers. It's a mix of software developers and kind of sales and marketing people. It's a really great crew. We all mostly based here in Christchurch, got a person in Auckland, but we have had staff in Australia and all over the place in the past. But our team is a whole bunch of young people mostly. So it's a really great crew. We operate in the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So we're definitely like a global business, and we serve some of our largest customers, in fact, are in the UK. So it's a really interesting dynamic working with customers all over the world, especially for such like a young team, which is growing really quickly. So why should you work at Vext in the first place? Well, as a kind of badge of honor, we were just recently announced as one of the top 100 companies to work for, one of the top 100 tech companies to work for in the country, alongside companies like Rocket Lab, Xero, and other really cool businesses. And that was actually for the second year in a row. So Vext is regularly recognized as having an awesome culture and is a great place to work. So that's super exciting. But what does that actually mean in practice? Well, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is the flexibility in the business. What that means is our staff work remotely or from the office. You can see from probably the view behind me that I'm actually working out in my bedroom right now. But we have an office on campus in Rurehua, which is a really nice place, and that's where like most of the team are today. We offer support for relocation. So if you are tired of living in New Zealand and you want to go work somewhere else, we'll help you achieve that goal. And you can still work for Vext over there. So regardless of whether you're keen to move to Sydney or the Antarctic, it's not a problem for us. You can also pick your own hours. So, if you need to go to the doctors or the dentist, you've got appointments and these places start open at 9, close at 5. Well, it doesn't really matter because you can just go and do that anyway and make the hours up on, some later time or date. It's not an issue at Vext. It's a super high growth and early stage company. So we're often growing at 30% per month, which means at that pace, we're doubling every few months, which is pretty crazy in terms of revenue. What that means is that there are a lot of opportunities at Vext, including leadership opportunities. As an early employee on our team, you may, in a few years' time, be leading a team of like 5, 10 people or what have you. So that's really cool. You also get exposure to a lot of different technology as an early employee. In some larger corporates, you might be kind of bundled into a team that's working on one area of the technology or the sales without any really exposure to anything more broader, which can get boring and can be bad for your career long term. Also, working at a high growth tech startup is really helpful for finding good paying jobs in the future. As an example, our earliest investor, he worked in a startup company. That software startup company did pretty well, and he's now earning something like $2 million a year in his 30s, working remotely from Kaiapoi for a business in the US. So there are pretty cool opportunities when it comes to working for high growth early stage technology companies. We've got a really supportive culture. So, we have 20 days of sick and mental health leave. So, if you need to take a day off because for basically whatever reason, you need a break, you're sick, you're just tired and emotionally drawn out, you can take that without having to be like worried about how that's going to affect your job. We support our team outside of their roles at Vext. So one example was we had interns working at Vext a couple of years ago, and they were really enjoying working at Vext, but they were really passionate about hardware. We don't have any opportunities to work on hardware at Vext, so I helped those guys get jobs at another company. They, in fact, didn't have to interview. They were offered jobs because I shouted them out on LinkedIn. So that's the kind of support you can expect if you come and work for us. And we also offer direct feedback, which basically means you have opportunities to receive feedback on your work really often. It's really high quality feedback, and it means it's a lot easier for you to understand whether or not you're doing well or poorly and how you can improve, which can be really helpful as well. We're also nice about it, so it's not crazy harsh or anything. So what can you do at Vext? Well, we've got software and growth internships available. For our software internships, pretty self-explanatory. We want you to have some existing skills as a software developer, whether that means you're like a second year or a first year, software engineering, computer science, whatever. Basically, you have to be able to write code. Super simple. For the growth internship, it's a little bit more complicated. You don't need any software skills whatsoever. You can have software skills and apply for our growth internships. That's cool. Basically, our growth interns will be doing a whole range of different things, mostly experiments to try and get us customers and users faster. So that could be writing an email. It could be going to an event and selling Vext. It could be doing a presentation kind of like this. There's a whole range of different areas that you get to work on as a growth intern, and that's open to anyone from any background. To apply for either of those internships, just jump to vxt.co.nz/careers and click on them, have a look at the job descriptions, and yeah, apply if you're keen. So that's basically it. I hope that was a bit fast. So I hope you guys have had a chance to think of some questions, but if not, that's all good too. Again, you can reach me at luke@vxt.co.nz. You can message the chatbot on our website, or you can just go ahead and apply for the job. So, does anyone have any questions?
I can start you off there, Luke. What are some qualities that you're looking for in your interns or people that are looking to work for you? And what are you looking for exactly on their CVs?
Yeah, so for our growth interns, we're looking for people that have like strong initiative and emotional resilience. Doing like anything that's kind of like sales can be pretty emotionally taxing. You get rejected a lot. So being able to be resilient in the face of that is valuable. And being able to take initiative, come up with experiments on your own would be valuable there too. From a software perspective, we're looking for people who are analytical, potentially have performed really well in their courses. But overall, we're also really adamant on looking for people who are like culturally fit with Vext, which means, you know, they share the values that we have. And we have an entire interview dedicated to that, like establishing whether or not someone is a cultural fit for Vext. And that's not to say we have heaps of interviews or it's a long process or anything like that. There are 2 interviews, pretty short. There's no take-home tests or anything silly like that either. So we don't waste anyone's time.
We'll say to the people that are in the chat and in the call, you don't have to turn your microphone on if you're not too comfortable. Feel free to put any questions in the chat.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep. How's it going?
Yeah. Kia ora, Luke. My name's Lucas. I've been looking at your application process for a while now. Just sort of have it open in a tab, but haven't got around to it because we at university we haven't been doing any JavaScript, so I've sort of been self-teaching myself that at home.
Yep. And
I'm wondering, like, is you know, doing some online exercises and making my own stuff at home, is that going to be enough for the application, or are you looking for someone who's shown some kind of proficiency in it before?
Yeah, that's definitely enough for the application. So do chuck that in. I mean, having showing proficiency in it before is helpful, but by no means do we like exclude people. Like if you're especially that you're willing to like go ahead and do self-learning at home prior to like an internship, that's like super positive thing from our perspective. And like the technical test and the interview process would be like catered to a language that you were confident in and comfortable with. So if you wanted to do it in Python or something else, we can arrange that. So that's chill. But yeah, that's the idea. Ultimately, we're looking for people who are just like fast learners and good at what they do. So if you haven't had exposure to JavaScript, it's not a real big issue as long as you're willing to jump into it.
Awesome, thank you.
No worries, man. Cool. Any more questions, guys? Maybe Aaron's got another one.
Just trying to think back to if there's anything like what the previous people have said. Well, this is some stuff that you, or you got any more that you would like to tell them more about how you got to the position you're in and how you kind of got to the idea of this?
Yeah, so sure, I can share a little bit on that. So basically, I kind of briefly brushed over how we got started. Oh, excuse me. So originally, I was super passionate about entrepreneurship. My background's in physics and economics, so I'm not a computer scientist. And I was really passionate about entrepreneurship. And so I did a course because I didn't know how to start a business, or I didn't know the first thing about like entrepreneurship at all, to be honest. I just knew it was really interesting to me and I was keen to get involved. So I did a course that was offered by the UCE and uni, and it was on basically how to start your business. And it, along with like heaps of other resources online which are available, taught me to look for problems to solve. If you're trying to start a business, solve that problem and build your company around that solution, like that initial problem. And the simpler the better. So I was just going about my life and got a few voicemail messages, and I thought it was like super massive pain in the ass. So figured that was an interesting idea. How could we make voicemail easy? There weren't a lot of people doing it in New Zealand at the time. In fact, we released the first cross-platform mobile app to help people manage their voicemail in the country. And so that was kind of how we got started. We didn't go through a rigorous process to figure out like whether or not it would actually be useful or whether or not anyone would pay for it. But we managed to get some subscribers, generate some revenue, and luckily raise some money. And that gave us the amount, the time, and like the runway to actually pivot the company, change the company into something that could be really, really valuable. So we in terms of building Vex today and like how do we get to that point, we pivoted out of necessity because Vex voicemail wasn't growing fast enough for us to even pay ourselves. And so we ended up talking to some lawyers, some other people about the work that they do, the problems they face in their day-to-day life, and came across this problem where they spend a lot of time on small repetitive tasks associated with communications like video calls, phone calls, texts, whatever, where they've got to keep really good records of the comms that they have with clients and other people, and that it takes 5 to 15 minutes per call, per video call, per message, whatever. So we decided to automate that stuff, and we figured out that to automate that stuff we had to be the provider that they used for calls. So we basically set forth from there, built a solution, released it in March 2021, and since then it's just been growing really quite fast and has proven to be like a really good decision for us. And to figure out all that information about like why, what problems exist, why we should pivot, and like who we should try and sell the product to. We interviewed about 100 people, close to 100 people, like hour-long interviews, like kind of scientific interviews that you might do for like a master's, sort of like that kind of master's research level stuff. So it was pretty like in-depth and super useful. Yeah, so today we're almost profitable, which is really cool. And investors are still giving us money, which is even better. So we can hire people and do all that fun stuff. Yeah, we're growing really quickly. Likely next year we'll raise quite a significant amount of money in the, anything from like $5 million to, if we get lucky, tens of millions. So that's the trajectory we're on at the moment. And so definitely like looking for people who are keen to help us get there and benefit themselves massively in the process.
Another thing I'll ask as well.
Shoot.
You mentioned about you obviously can help your employees grow and go into other companies. Say if someone's sticking long term with Vex, where do you think that'll help them progress in their career, or where do you think you'll be in 5 years?
Yeah, in 5 years' time, ideally Vex will be doing. This is based on like expected growth rates. We could quite reasonably. This is a pretty outlandish thing to say, but mathematically it makes perfect sense that we could be like doing $100 million a year in 5 years' time. For typical software companies, that means Vex will be like a unicorn, like valued at multiples of like billions, which is pretty hectic. So if you join us now when we're a team of like 10, by that time we might be thousands of people. So, you know, if you're capable of like growing into like a leadership position, you could be like suddenly finding yourself at like really senior level, earning what senior level like technology staff do, which is like hundreds and hundreds of thousands at least. So like, yeah, from that perspective, it's a really cool opportunity. It's also risky though, right? Startups fail all the time. But, you know, in the situations where startups fail, you know, I've got lots of friends who have done startups and had them fail. They often get hired, the team of those startups often get hired at, you know, with salaries and positions that are like higher than what they would have if they went like a more traditional route. So even in failure, joining a early stage startup is often like better for your career than just going with like some boring corporate. So yeah.
Cool. Have we got any questions coming in the chat? A few people in here got any more questions for Luke?
Sweet. I think that might be us, to be honest.
Yeah, you've just said best contact used through your LinkedIn, eh?
Yeah, LinkedIn, email. So my email is luke@vxt.co.nz. You can apply for our jobs at vxt.co.nz/careers. And otherwise, you can hit me up on LinkedIn as well. Or if you really want to go to the next level, you can stalk me on Facebook. I'll probably reply to you because I, you know, love recruitment. So, yeah, ideally those other channels would be perfect.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'll just stop this recording.